Now, every time I make a video about investing, I always tell everyone before you start investing, make sure you pay off all your debts. Make sure you actually have a fully funded emergency account. And I have videos on both of these things, but separate. But I don't have one video where I actually teach and take the time to break down how to do both of these things just in one video. So that's what I'm actually doing here. I'm spending the time to actually teach you and show you exactly how to pay off your debt, why to do this, how to do it, and where to find the money to pay off the debt, okay? Because sometimes you're like, I want to pay, but where's the money to pay off my debt, Tommy? I'll show you how to get the money because the money is already there. I'll also show you exactly how to build an emergency account, from why to build an emergency account, where to save the money, and basically, how much you actually need overall inside of it. By the end of this video, you'll have both of these answers, and I'll tell you the full benefit of doing these things before you start investing. Now, the very first thing, guys, is this. Do me a favor and smash the like button. If you guys don't know me, my name is Tommy Bryson. Now, here is how you actually pay off your debt. Now, believe it or not, the hardest thing about paying off your debt is not going to be the dollar amount and the time it takes, although that does take time and it can be difficult. However, the hardest thing is going to be getting over the mental side of paying off debt. It took me about 5 to 7 years to pay off my student loan debt, but it wasn't because I owed a bunch of money, like millions of dollars. I owed like around $20,000 to $22,000, which was a lot of money. But the reason it took so long wasn't because of the dollar amount. It was just because I kept saying to myself, but I can grab this money, I can invest it, and make more money. Why would I pay off this debt that's low interest? The answer is there are a lot of reasons to pay off your debt. It is not just based on numbers overall. There are other things to consider. For example, okay, the Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. And I've seen that be true so many times. I've bought things where the joy of actually having that is stolen just by knowing I owe it. I know people where I lent them money and then now all of a sudden our relationship changes. This is very true. As long as you have debts, it's going to usually cause you some level of stress, and on top of that, it is going to cause some level of friction in your life. Stress because you're worried about the money that you actually owe. Stress because you don't know if you might lose your income and now you owe all this stuff. And friction because for as long as you actually have this debt, every time you get paid, you're going to be reminded of it because there's going to be a chunk of your income that's going to be taken to pay that item off. I know people that they have a car, they love the car, they owe the car, they hate the car. Because every month they're reminded, I owe this car. Every month they pay $500 to $700 in that car. It's almost ridiculous. But they justify it by saying, well, I need the car. Transportation, but you don't need to buy a car you can't afford. It's very dumb to actually do that. So what's the strategy to actually pay off your debt? The answer is, here is a strategy I recommend. It is not the strategy I used. I'll tell you what I used later, okay? But what I recommend is that you actually use the snowball method. This method is very easy. It has the high success rates, and you don't really need to complicate things that much, which is awesome. Now, before you start paying off your debt, I always recommend you do this. I recommend make a full list of all the debt, the names of the people you owe money to, and try to negotiate with them. Not to lower the balance. If they do, great, but it's not that. It's to actually get them to lower your interest rate, to maybe pause payments or pause interest rates for some time. And you do this by watching another one of my videos on how to do this. I think it's called Lower Interest Rates by TommyBryson. And I'm not trying to plug here, although it's a plug, but it's because I have in that video like a script on how to call the people and how to actually ask to get these things done. If you can't find that video, look it up on Google or just tell me in the comments down below and I'll make a new video on it, okay? But it's very important because sometimes you're stuck paying a bunch of stuff. You can't really make any progress because it's so much, but just with a phone call, they can lower the interest rate, they can pause the payments, and now you can focus on everything else. Now, the snowball method basically says this. You're going to organize your debt from the smallest balance to the largest balance, okay? And then you want to basically look at what the minimum payments actually are, and you want to pay the minimum payments on all of them because you don't want to stop making payments. It's going to ruin you financially potentially. But you want to focus the bulk of all the extra money towards the smallest one, the smallest debt. So let's say I have $1,000 worth of extra cash to pay debt. I have $200 in minimum payments. So I have an extra $800 that I'm actually going to use to pay one debt off. I'm going to use all that money and put it towards the smallest debt. And then the next one, and the next one. And that could be, for example, a parking ticket. It could be I owe my mom $5. It could be a $200 credit card. It could be whatever it is, but that's what you want to focus on. Now, do you pay all your debts before you start investing? The answer is yes, except the mortgage. Because if you try to pay off your mortgage, you might be stuck paying that thing off for 10 to 15 years and you never make any progress investing. But until you invest, you should get rid of all the other debt, like the student loan debt, personal loans, or whatever you have, even car loans, okay? Credit cards, all that stuff. And then finally, you start to worry about investing, but only after you've done this, which is basically build up an emergency account. And we're almost there. But the last thing I want to tell you about paying debt is this. Where are you going to get the money? Well, there are 3 places, okay? Number 1, budget. That's the first thing you want to do. You budget, so you look at what you need and what you don't need, cut off what you don't need. That's the number 1 way. Number 2 is you're going to sell things off you don't need, and you use that money to pay off debt. And number 3 is making some extra cash via some side hustles. But I recommend don't spend more than 4 hours or 2 hours on actually doing a bunch of side hustles, because you might not have any free time for yourself, your family, and all the things that are actually very important, more important than paying off debt faster. If I can focus on my family and God and basically be done with my debt maybe a year later, I'd rather do that than basically just go crazy and not have time for the very important things. So something to weigh and consider, or instead of doing, for example, 4 hours after work, just do 2 hours. And that's 12 hours every single week, an extra $700 a month, pay it off, pay it off, pay it off. And I'm doing both at the same time. And I'm not basically ignoring things that are more important than money and debt and everything else, okay? That's the idea. Now, number 2, building up an emergency account. And the first thing is why? Why is this so important? I think everyone knows, so I won't spend that much time on it, but it's for when bad things happen. Notice I didn't say if bad things happen, because at some point, something is going to happen to everyone. You're going to lose a family member. You're going to probably lose your job. You're going to think something and something else is going to happen. You might buy something thinking something, and then guess what? Something else pops up. The answer is something bad is usually going to happen. So you want to be taken care of by having, for example, at least a buffer. An emergency account is going to help you out a ton. Now, how much money should you have in there? The answer is 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. That's going to be a lot of cash depending on how much money you're spending per month. Now, how much more can I save? Can I do it for 12 months? Can I do it for 2 years? You could do it all the way up to 5 years, in my opinion. Beyond that, it gets a little wild. But when you're first getting started, I would just do 3 months to 6 months. And here's when I would do 3 months. If you have a job that is absolutely in crazy high demand, I would do 3 months. Like if I'm a nurse and I know I can get a job anywhere at any time, making good money, I would just do 3 months because I know my job is secure and within 3 months I can find another job. But if I work a job where it might take me some time to actually find a decent career or a decent job, for example, replacement, I'll do 6 months. Now, let's say, for example, how do you calculate this? Where do you put the money? I would put the money in a high yield savings account that offers competitive rates and that's also FDIC insured. Right now, I like SoFi Money, I like Discover, I like Ally Bank. These are all great wealth funds. There are a bunch of good banks out there that actually offer great competitive rates. They're usually going to be online banks. They're usually not going to be normal brick and mortar banks, because those banks don't pay anything whatsoever when it comes to interest rates. But again, it's not really about interest rates. You just want it to be competitive, because this way, at least your money is not being eaten up completely by inflation. Now, how much money do you actually put aside? Well, again, if you spend every month $4,000 and those are your expenses, let's say $2,000, because $4,000 is a lot of money, $2,000, and you want to do 3 months, well, 2,000 times 3, that's $6,000, right? If you want to do 6 months, well, 6 times 2 is $12,000. And again, that can take you some time. And that's why you want to do it only after you're debt free, because by that point you have extra cash. Now, you could always save, for example, before you start being debt free, like $500 to $1,000. And I do recommend this. You actually have that money on the side just as a mini emergency account. So if something does happen when you're paying off your debt, you have some cash to kind of figure out what you're actually going to do. But that's the idea. Now, I want you guys to imagine this. Imagine now you're investing, right? Once you have no debt, once you have a fully funded emergency account, it's so much better because you know you don't have to worry about paying anyone any money. You don't have to worry about interest rates and having to leverage that. All your money is yours and you can use it for investing. A part of it, because there are other parts to financial freedom, which that will be for another video. And imagine now you have an emergency and you've been investing. Well, you don't have to take money out your investments because you did the work beforehand and you have money outside of your investments just for that. And that's called your emergency account. But imagine the people that say, I'm going to do both. They're paying debt, they're saving up some cash, and they're also investing. They have an emergency, they have to sell out some investments, okay? They have a job loss, they have to sell off some investments because they have debts to pay and bills to pay, or those things start to accrue and build up a bunch of money and interest. That's the idea, and that's why it's so important to actually do this. That's why we actually build an emergency account, and that's why we actually pay off the debt, okay, guys? But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you want to watch more, here's another one. On top of that, also subscribe. Long-term team out.